Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. This is a conversation that we had on one of our Monday Winning the Week coaching calls. And the conversation was so great and impactful and so many ahas and outcomes that we're going to share it with you, the Fasting for Life podcast listenership. So we're excited today. The article where this comes from is out of the Journal of Clinical Obesity, and it's Dietary Restraint. What's the harm? ? A review of the relationship between dietary restraint, weight trajectory, and the development of eating pathology.
Wow.
So we're going to take a fasting for life approach to this and really beg the question of, have you defined, what's the best fasting schedule? What's your fasting lifestyle look like? How do you define and approach this process or this plan matters just as much as the plan itself. And the mindset around it and how you feel about it shapes the outcome. So if you're new to the podcast, excited for you. Thanks for joining us. However you found us, welcome to the Fasting for Life world. We are on this fasting lifestyle journey with you. If you want to know more about my journey, Tommy's journey, why we do what we do week in and week out with our episodes and our resources, the website, the challenges, the coaching, it'll give you a little bit of insight into how fasting transformed our lives and ultimately we want for every single one of you in your life as well. If you're a long-term listener, shout out to you as well. Just so grateful for all the messages and the likes and the rates and the reviews. Keep those 5-star reviews coming. We are so grateful for them. Truly gives me the goosebumps to keep going and doing this week in and week out, taking on the obesity and diabetes epidemics that we currently have here in the States. So Tommy, excited for today's conversation because we often, how do I say this? I say it often, now my brain just went blank. We say we want to begin with the end in mind with this lifestyle journey, right? Most of us come to fasting for weight loss, but ultimately we want all the additional benefits as well. I was an undiagnosed pre-diabetic. You had, was it sleep apnea, I believe?
Oh yeah, borderline, yep.
And I had asthma and allergies, and my blood pressure was ticking up and my cholesterol numbers were off, but I was counting calories and tracking macros and hiring the expensive functional nutritionist here in Houston and doing the CrossFit and doing meal planning for 8 hours on Sundays with my wife, and just couldn't figure out why I wasn't seeing the results. And that speaks to the bigger problem or the state of the health union that we have, so to speak, which is 75% of the population's overweight or obese. We live in a food noise-filled, obesogenic, high-stress, more sedentary world than ever before. And tracking calories and counting macros and eat less, move more has failed for so many of us. And maybe in the short term, we've gotten wins, just like going to fasting for weight loss, right? We've gotten short-term wins, but then we never truly become part of the 5%, which is one of our foundational research that we always go back to and we've built a lot of our coaching and curriculum on, which is the Marie Spreckley research of the weight loss managers. We don't become that 5%. We become the 95%, which is we lose a little bit of weight, but then life gets in the way, stress gets in the way, our old habits and patterns get in the way, and then ultimately we fall off and then we have to restart, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what we want.
When we divide up the 5% from the 95%, it really is a matter of what the research shows is that there's a lot of different variables that kind of separate the two. And the big aha is the fact that it's not just about what they do, what's on the plate, or what's on the fasting time every single day. It's about all of the other things that are never really talked about as far as the diet plan or the exercise or the meal plan, or it's so many of the intangibles
Yep.
They put this interesting graphic in there that we've dubbed the stoptagon, the octagon of octagons. It's all of these different little like stop signs that have
Tracking
all
and
of
monitoring
these,
and goals and internal and external motivation and all of that stuff.
confidence, fear of regain, self challenges, intrinsic rewards, extrinsic rewards, all of these various factors. And really what it boils down to is the fact that if we understand that there's more to the long-term success than just the actual calorie count, the macronutrient count, and the fasting time, that there are other factors at play, then what it means is we can build into our plan the expectation that there will be things that we have to deal with and roll with. There is a change in body composition that comes with losing a lot of weight, and then getting into the gym and using resistance training and prioritizing protein. And there's some shifts sometimes with even the number on the scale that we kind of identify with or that we use as a long-term goal because it's some previous version of ourselves or whatever it is that we're kind of shooting for. There's a lot of factors at play, and even just the term momentary maintenance can come into play where we're
the
gaining
dreaded
confidence.
plateau, Tommy. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, there's the plateau that can come in, which might be part of a set point or a settling point, as we'll discuss. But then also the flip side of that can be proactive, where fear of regain can be a real thing, and that can actually slow down our progress too. Even just the idea that we have in the back of our head that if I don't do everything right, like I'm doing right now, that I'm going to quickly gain it all back. And I had a lot of that at the beginning of my consistent fasting journey as well. And so sometimes it can be a really good proactive measure to practice something like a momentary maintenance where we're really proactive about it. And we just say, you know what, like, what if I just hung out here for a little bit? How could I do that and let me gain some of that confidence that it's not just going to all come flying back to me. But all of these things are kind of roll into this idea of how I feel about the plan even can matter more about the exact specifics of the plan itself.
Yeah. So initially when we were talking about this, it's, this is a dietary restraint eating disorder paper. So we'll connect the dots big picture and a little bit of nuance here in a second. But researchers, they were coming from the fact that they found that restrained eating, so this cycle of restrict, feeling deprived, willpower fails, rinse, repeat.
Yep.
Right? So the restraint isn't automatically harmful, but it can become problematic when it's inconsistent. So it's this definition and approach to your fasting plan and fasting lifestyle, dieting strategy, counting calories, whatever strategy you lose to lose the weight and become part of that 5%, right, of successful weight loss managers. It's the mindset and the definitions matter just as much as the fasting plan or the diet plan or the weight loss plan, whatever you want to call it, itself. Mm-hmm. Because that mindset shapes the outcome. So when we look at this paper, it was really interesting to me because when I first read it, it was like, dietary restraint, what's the harm? A review of the relationship between dietary restraint, weight trajectory, and development of eating pathology. I'm like, oh, geez, this is a doozy, right? It sounds fun. And it's really a review on why behavior change is the linchpin of long-term weight loss and why willpower in this diet culture that we live in fails for 95% of us over time. And it's going to reframe obesity and weight regain, that fear of regain or the actual regain, where we go through that cycle of restrict, feel deprived, fail, repeat. It's going to reframe that or frame it as a chronic relapsing condition driven by three main things: biology, environment, which we've talked a little bit about already, and our learned behaviors or our subconscious behavioral habit patterns, as we like to say. And it really argues that the lifestyle and the cognition, the mindset behavioral interventions are necessary, not optional.
Yeah.
You need these as part of your process. So we're going to go through each one of those drivers and put some action steps to them. But I always think about, I reference this often, it's the Fat Loss Forever by Dr. Peter Baker and Dr. Layne Norton. There's an entire chapter on called Why Diets Fail and the three-pronged approach of your body to fight back after you've made some progress on the scale. That set point or that metabolic adaptation. So we're going to talk about that and really frame it in a why is it so hard and complicated narrative. Now, it may not be your fault directly, but it is your problem, right? True. It was my problem. It's your problem, Tommy. It's our coaching client's problem. But it's this mindset shift that it's how you define and approach the plan that matters more than the plan itself. So, yeah, we need the structured lifestyle and the behavioral interventions and habit transformation as necessary, not bolt-ons or add-ons or maybes, to allow us to manage the biological, environmental, and habits that we currently have to ultimately lose the weight once and for all and then stay there and maintain it, right? So that's the crux of what we're approaching here. And there's so many things that we conversate on week over week on our coaching calls and our challenges on these podcast episodes. But I think breaking it down into these sections of biological, environmental, and psychological is really going to help kind of identify where the weak links are in your chain, so to speak. Does that make sense, Tommy?
Yeah, I think it does. Even just kind of categorizing your method into these different buckets means that you're looking at it in a way that's just it's not just about what is the perfect plan. Like you started the conversation with, what is the right fasting schedule for you, or what's the perfect fasting plan for you, which is the number one question that we get still.
And the first domino that you really need.
Yes, absolutely. So you need it. You got to check the box. You have to have something in place for that. But at the same time, even just looking at it as what is the perfect plan is kind of a misframed question. It's kind of missing the mark in that question, because really, what is the right fasting plan for you right now for your goals is a better way to look at it, because it's going to be shifting. So we want multiple different tools in your fasting tool belt, but also just the acknowledgement that there's different seasons of life. There's different chapters in your fasting lifestyle, whether you're in a fat loss phase or a maintenance phase, or whether you've been recently regaining some of it, whatever the case may be. There's going to be different tools that you're going to need at different times. But then also, when things feel a little stale, a little stagnant, when you have some fasting fatigue or some slippage that comes in, does your plan, do you have a little bit of mental wiggle room so that you are able to identify those times quickly and then get back on track quickly? Or do those times kind of take over and then it becomes an all or nothing approach, essentially just like another diet where everything kind of goes out the window, and then you find yourself a few months later, or at some point needing to really regain a lot of traction and really frustrated by taking all these steps backwards? Because I've been there in both fasting and non-fasting life. But when we look at this kind of as a multifaceted approach like this, it really helps to kind of set the stage to prepare and prevent those kind of things from happening.
So the revelations or the important conclusions that came out of this in really using the restraint, right, without the negative input or the negative backfire, right? Mm-hmm. The restrict, feel deprived, fail, repeat cycle. It is possible to avoid those negative effects and engage in that consistent, manageable, and sustainable lifestyle change, right? So the three main outcomes were that restraint is not inherently bad or good. Now, if you're one of those people that's like, I'm never going to eat a roll again, or I'm never going to have ice cream again, like, that's not reality, right? Or you have good or bad food lists. Those are some things where, we've got some mindset stuff or some shifts that we need to make. Now, if you've got a, allergic reaction to something, or you can't eat nuts because it stimulates, a bowel issue, right? Or Crohn's or IBS, that's different, of course.
Sure.
But the second main point is that people are different. We're all different. We have different experiences based on your weight loss and weight gain history, your upbringing, your culture, your environment, your other variables, right? And then most importantly, though, how you define this process of weight loss makes a difference in your experience with it, not anybody else's, but yours. And this is why we set up our coaching the way we do and the challenges the way we do, is to make it customized and personalized So let's talk through these three kind of underpinnings of long-term weight loss sustainability without the negative feedback loops, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got biological drivers, environmental drivers, and psychological behavior drivers, the subconscious habit patterns. So we already mentioned this earlier, this metabolic adaptation after weight loss, right? So after you lose a sustainable amount of weight or a considerable amount of weight, a clinically significant 5, 10, 12, 15% of your body weight, your body adapts. So you've got a lower resting energy expenditure. You've got increased hunger signals like ghrelin and reduced satiety hormones. So your body is literally throwing a temper tantrum on like, hey, I want to protect what we call the set point theory, where your body has an ideal weight that it likes to stay. And either if you do it through calorie counting, tracking, eat less, whatever, fasting for us is the main lever we pull, right? You get to this set point where your body, the plateau or this momentary maintenance, as we like to call it. But I really like the reframe that I think you came up with on was this settling point. So it's not a set point, but it's a settling point. It's like where our body's settling in.
Yeah.
And it's that the body defends its higher weight via the hunger, cravings, and energy conservation, right, Tommy?
Absolutely, for sure. And what we know from the research is that at one of these settling points where it feels like things are kind of slowing down for us a bit, or maybe it's been a previous plateau that we're kind of up against again, it's not only a physiological barrier, but oftentimes it's a psychological barrier too. And this is where sometimes we can get fasting fatigue. It feels like I'm fasting, I'm doing everything right, or maybe I'm even fasting a little bit more than I was before, but the results just aren't coming like they were before. And that can be from any number of things, Scott. Like you mentioned, the biological hormonal adaptations are big. But sometimes it just takes time for our body to adjust to a new normal and a new average fasting insulin normal as well as a new blood sugar regulation point where, we oftentimes see with folks that as they get weight off, their A1C is coming down because they're having better blood sugar control, which means that they're able to, they're able to actually have a better, more physiological response to their insulin needs. And then it's not this overactive insulin response so much, but that can take time where the adjustments of your actual food seeking behavior, kind of balancing out with your blood sugar and your insulin response, everything can kind of take some time. So sometimes we just kind of settle in to a certain point. And as long as we can stay interested and motivated and confident in the method that, hey, at the very least, I'm maintaining what I've done here. It's not. That's
a huge win
right.
that gets so overlooked.
It's so big because it's so easy for us that like we get so resistant, so like impatient with the process, especially when it's been working. And then now it's like 3 months ago or 6 months ago, I would have killed for control over the scale when it was ticking up. Now I have it, but it's not moving down the way I've gotten used to. It's not good enough anymore. And all of a sudden I get frustrated. And this can be demotivating. And all of a sudden, if it starts changing my food decisions or my fasting time, all of a sudden I've created the self-fulfilling prophecy, which was that things slowed down. So then I slowed them down further, and then I brought them back the other direction. So instead of just wading through, because hey, sometimes when you're going along, you just have to take a breath. You just have to pause for a minute. Sometimes you just have to regain your composure. If we think about that metabolically, it can give us a little bit more patience. Just look at it like maintaining here is a big win. And sometimes my body just needs to catch up. And this is some of the time when body composition, doing some measurements can be helpful. It can be helpful to get a few, points of feedback that aren't related to the scale.
When you hit this settling point or this plateau or this momentary maintenance and the things you were doing, aren't working anymore, there's two things that typically come up in here is like fasting fatigue. Right? That's why I love episode 311 with this foundational fast. Like, I am a faster, right? This is my lifestyle. Right. Yeah. Just like some people do Pilates and some people wood yoga. Carve and some people make soap. Like it's something they do. It's part of who you are. It's part of your lifestyle, right? And then the other thing is slippage. So slippage around your consistency with your fasting because you're getting frustrated with the lack of so big picture, again, the mindset here is my body is inherently doing what it does. There's a metabolic adaptation that takes place. It's part of the process. So if we expect this when it comes, we're like, oh yeah, not if, but when.
Right.
Right? I know this is coming. You got 40 pounds to lose, and you lose 20. I don't want to say easily, but pretty easily or more quickly in the beginning, and then you get stuck, and then that last 20 feels like an eventual, like, never going to get there.
Right.
Like, never going to get it right. Like, never going to get there. Can't believe I just sang on it. Sorry for everybody. Dogs are howling. And then you get, and as we all know, as you get closer to your end goal, the increments get smaller. So we have to have that mindset that this is part of that process, that there are going to be set points based on your body's metabolic adaptation of lower resting energy output and expenditure, hunger signals, and satiety hormones, right?
Yeah. What about just getting used to your food needs being a little bit different?
Yeah, your portion size.
At a different weight. And like that takes some time to kind of get used to. And it can be really helpful in those moments to double down on your prioritizing protein, because protein is so satisfying per calorie. But at the same time, that's not always the focal point. So sometimes we just lose sight of those little things, and it can just become a frustrating time.
Yep. Absolutely. So the second category is the environmental drivers category, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the food world that we live in. I'm not putting all the blame on the food. If you want to read a great book, Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss.
Great book.
Great book. Perspective on our food supply. Ultra processed, refined, larger portions, eating opportunities all day long, especially with DoorDash and Uber Eats. And you can literally get anything delivered to your door at any time of the day. The larger portion ones makes me laugh because it's like the value menu or the Chili's 3 for $30 or whatever it is, or the Taco Bell, fourth meal. But like, it's like you go to Denny's, it's like, wow, I can get the 18-wheeler or whatever it is, the American Slam. I get all this food for $12.99. Like, so this is the food noise, obesogenic food environment that we live in. So again, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem because we live in this world. And then the secondary environmental driver is that we're more sedentary than ever before. Driving, desks, screens. I don't know about you, but like I hate notifications. Like we're connected 24/7. Back in the day, I used to go to work and come home and I'd have 3 messages on the answering machine. People left me messages, give me a phone call. Mm-hmm. Now they can call you, text you, hey, I sent you an email, and then they send you the text and I left you a voicemail, but here's the text message to tell you I left you a voicemail, and here's the world news and the blah, 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 blah.
All right.
Right? So these are the environmental drivers that will cause us to drive our behavior. And when you're stressed out and you're underslept and you're overstimulated, what do? Well, we typically go into that very convenient food environment that we live in.
Sure.
There was a great marketing initiative during the Super Bowl. My son just started playing football, flag football. So, Dad, let's watch the Super Bowl. I'm like, okay, great. My team happened to be in it. I was like, yes, let's watch the Super Bowl. I don't get a lot of time to watch football on Sundays, right? I don't typically ever sit down and watch a full game. Didn't even get to sit down and watch the full Super Bowl. Had to put the kids to bed. But there was a marketing, I think it was Matthew McConaughey and maybe Uber Eats or one of the food services where it was like,
I think that's right.
Yeah, the Super Bowl ads aren't about selling food. It's about football. And then he's like, no, let's cut to the chase. It's about food.
All right.
Like that's a great marketing strategy. But that's the world that we live in. So this environmental drivers, stress in the food environment is a big component of long-term sustainability. So it's the restrict, feel deprived, fail, repeat. And it's easier to repeat more now than ever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. And like when we're talking about the environmental factors, that's a lot of times what that's just another one that we don't necessarily think about with respect to our long-term plan. Because if you just think about that chronic stress exposure and our sleep habits in and of themselves, like we just did a recent podcast last week on how just a small change in a 2-hour difference in the timing of your last meal, the timing of your dinner, and how big of a difference that makes in your cardiometabolic output and cardiometabolic risk
factors. In your sleep, in your hunger hormones the next day, and all.
Yes,
that consistent fasting efforts.
Right, and so that difference right there is enough to account for 20 to 30% of your insulin resistance the following day, because it determines the quality of your sleep and your sleep efficiency. So that lever right there, which is one that's in almost no like maintenance or diet plan or fasting plan, long-term maintenance kind of thing, just protecting your sleep and making sure that it's as good as possible. Because when it's not, maintenance is the stretch goal. It might not even be quite possible possible to really maintain fully after a couple of bad nights sleep like that.
Yep.
So even just that one environmental driver is such a big determinant of long-term success or not. And if you stack together a whole bunch of sleep failures like that, then again, the stretch goal might be maintenance. And so if you're expecting fat loss, but you're getting maintenance or maybe a slow regain, but it's during one of those times when you just don't have any control over your sleep, then that should be the expectation right there. And if expectation and reality don't quite match up, then that can be a real problem.
Yep. The third bucket, this is the psychological, mindset, behavioral, subconscious habit patterns, default behavior patterns. We call them the fasting types, right? Are you a gratuitous grazer, a fasting freelancer, or a weekend warrior? But it's these habit loops around snacking, emotional eating. We like to call it your relationship with food, your evening grazing, your social food cues. Do you have a yes problem, right? Are you saying yes to too many invitations and external environments that you're not comfortable in, that you're not confident in around food, right? It's this all or nothing mindset when it comes to I'm either on or off dieting. I'm on or off with my fasting. Right? This perfectionism. Oh, I blew it, so I'll just start again on Monday. I'll start again next week. I'll start again next month. That type of mindset thinking. And then comes into the internal kind of the way we perceive ourselves, our identity is the weight stigma, the shame, the guilt shame cycle, the restrict, deprivation, fail, repeat cycle. That's going to paradoxically drive more of the behavior. That's that negative feedback loop that we want to avoid. So the paper in this instance clearly shows that structured nutritional changes, right? So fasting, food choices, and shifting your patterns combined with increased movement, monitoring in some way, right? So tracking your fasting timers, your steps, your weekly weigh-ins, right? That's a huge component of core mechanism of success.
Yeah. Some level of accountability there.
And then that last piece, which is the follow-up and accountability, which mimics Maurice Breckley's groundbreaking research, right? With this weight loss managers, is this regularity of follow-up and accountability versus one-off advice, versus going to AI or going to your doctor or going to your friend, and you have this one conversation and like, you know what? I'm going to do a juice fast. And you're like, oh, okay. Right? Like,
yeah.
The next shiny, so those one-off advice situations really fall into this lifestyle intervention component, right? Nutrition here, Tommy, is huge.
Yeah, when we have inconsistency, it really leads to us feeling like we're on or we're off, or we're kind of hopping in and out. We have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, hot, cold. And so what really makes sense is while we're getting there, while we're using our tools for fat loss purposes, while we're doing the fasting that we need to be doing so we can get our health in order, get our metabolic flexibility back and our insulin sensitivity regained and our blood sugar under control, when we're doing these things, we should be thinking about, okay, the things that I'm doing now, I can't let go of these things for long-term maintenance. If I'm looking at it like that, then that's really just on-off diet mentality. So what I need to be thinking about is, how can I make these long-term changes? How can I make these sustainable for me and feel good long-term without feeling overly deprived? And so when it comes to food choices in particular, that really means, like, when I'm having a nutrition opportunity, it's not just about having smaller meals because they have less calories. It's really about having good, solid nutrition in a way that I'm going to be eating when I'm in long-term maintenance too, which is one of the reasons why we love, whenever we're doing an OMAD, shooting for about 40 to 60% of our daily caloric needs, because guess what? If we're having one meal, and the long-term sustainable way to do it might be having 2 meals roughly broken up into 50-50 as far as our nutrition needs go, then let me practice this one meal being about half of my nutrition needs and getting a good, 30 to 40% optimally of my macronutrients, my calories from protein during that meal, because that means that metabolically I'm optimizing my food choices in a way that I can bring with me to long-term maintenance. I don't have to change that. And I'm already developing that tool during my fat loss phase. And so when we're thinking about it that way, then there's really no chance for us to be looking at this as, I'm going to let go of all my tools for long-term success because I won't need them anymore. These are diet tools. And I think that's part of the issue, at least with kind of our generation and older generations, where we used a lot of tools. There were a lot of food products and supplement kind of things.
Weight Watchers and all the like.
Stuff that we had to bring in, and we had to use these things, and they were diet tools. And then the idea was always, okay, well, probably at some point I won't need those tools, so I'll let them go. And so then I can just do whatever I need to once I've lost the weight, right?
Yep.
But how we want to think about this is an adaptation, because you should always bring fasting in with your lifestyle. You should just adapt it a little differently when you're in maintenance versus in fat loss.
Yep. So what else the paper said? So we just talked about lifestyle intervention components, right? The second one is really the cognitive side, right? The CBT type side, which has been one of the truly only founded research-backed programs or systems out there to help when you do fall into the category of an eating disorder or a diagnosable pathological type situation. CBT, this cognitive piece, is such a strong is the research-backed way to approach that, to get help, to help create that long-term balance, right? So we're not going to go that far down, but there's still some things that were identified in the paper that apply to all of us, like identifying your triggers in your high-risk situations, right? Looking at this mental mindset piece of restructure that, where you have challenging overeating thoughts and these stories and narratives that you tell yourself. I'm an emotional eater. No, you have a habit of emotional eating, right? Yep. And then the problem-solving component, which is the stimulus control. So protect your inputs, change your environment, clear out the crap out of the pantry. Don't buy the ice cream if that's your go-to thing at night. Removing yourself from that environment short term and putting some, strategies in place when you have the stress and the emotions that come up that you typically go to food. Having some things in place, like a goal clarity exercise or an if, when, then exercise. If this happens, I'm going to do this instead of going to food. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to phone a friend. I'm going to play some music. I'm going to knit. I'm going to get some dopamine somewhere else.
Right.
That is huge in the mindset component of managing these stalls and unmatched expectations when the scale isn't rewarding you, right?
Absolutely. What I found to be a good leverage point for myself with some of these food choices for some of those trigger foods when I first got into consistent fasting was raise the standard in a way that like you could allow yourself the food. Like for me, one of them was pizza, another one was ice cream. Like allowing yourself a way to enjoy these foods.
One of mine was peanut butter.
Peanut butter, okay. So yeah, I mean that's a big one too. So
I'll just have a spoonful. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. But it's right there. It's readily available.
Taser on the lid. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to like pizza, for me, what I did was I said, okay, I'm gonna allow myself pizza, but I'm gonna bring it in. I'm gonna make it myself. So then it's less easy to just access for a few dollars and a few minutes. I could access it before, but now it takes some time and some more expense and some planning ahead of time. But the quality, the reaction from my body is going to be much better. My physiological response better. Control over the scales better. I'm going to feel better.
Yep.
I'm not going to feel the same way as the fast food pizza. And then at the same time, it's harder to get. So there's more of a barrier. And then it's also serving my long-term goals. And I did the same thing with ice cream, which was, at some point way back, we would just buy some at the grocery store. Like every week we would or maybe every couple of weeks, we would just buy a little bit. And so then just saying like, no, I'm never going to get ice cream from a normal grocery store run again, means that if I really wanted some, I could just go get some. But even that would typically not really happen. And so just the normal like limiting of the frequency and how often it actually happened was one of those limiting factors that allowed me to kind of take a step back and then put that together with salt, sugar, fat. Just reading salt, sugar, fat and understanding why some of my food choices were somewhat subconscious rather than just the things that I really wanted and had like conscious control over, was very eye-opening too. So when you put these things together with some long-term perspective over your plan and what may or may not be a factor in your plan, it's not just about the calories and the macros and the fasting time, then we can start building together a plan that really works for long-term sustainability.
Yep. And the last big kind of category that the paper really outlined was, this is something we talk so much about, the tools and the skills you use to skills and the tools you use to lose the weight. I'm not going to try it again.
Yeah.
Are the same skills and tools you will use to maintain them.
Yes.
So weight maintenance uses the same skills and tools as weight loss, but requires that ongoing support, that monitoring. It's looking at this, lapses are expected and manageable. They're not failures. And the identity shift, which is clear in Marie's Spreckley and her team's research, which was this identity shift, these core value shifts that take course over the 2 to 3 years, where we see most people fall back in the 95% of people that put the weight back on. It's a shift from I'm on a diet or I'm dieting, or I'm a faster or I'm fasting, to this is how I live now. I have a fasting lifestyle, right? And that speaks to exactly what we want ultimately with what we do with the podcast and our coaching and our training and resources and challenges. We want you to shift into that intuitive eating, fasting machine and get rid of that dieting mindset and get off that dieting roller coaster forever. So now I want to kind of really just, as we wrap up today, Tommy, is how does this fit into the fasting, our lexicon and our fasting lifestyle? Is there's really like simple defaults or foundational things. And we talked about, foundational fasting on episode 311 and episode 125, willpower, won't power, or want power, why willpower fades and why it's about habits. But like simple things like defaults. I don't eat before X or after Y, just like we talked about on last week's episode.
Yeah.
That's going to simplify your decision fatigue and that environmental bucket exposure. And it also aligns with the stimulus control, fewer eating occasions, fewer trigger opportunities with that emotional food relationship. And then we can talk about fasting as that metabolic plus psychological intervention, where it's going to address your body's set point or settling point, right? Your body's desire to protect the weight, the survival mechanisms. It's going to address your insulin and your hunger regulation while also reinforcing those new habits. Like, I'm a person who can go without constant snacking all day. I'm a person who can eat 2 main meals a day and not eat and graze all day long. And it integrates seamlessly with the CBT elements, the cognitive behavioral therapy elements of planning and monitoring and really managing those hunger cues and urges that come across your fasting lifestyle or your fasting windows on a day-to-day basis. And then where traditional eat less, move more feels short for us, in our opinion, is it lacks the structured behavioral change strategies, and it can fight against the metabolic component that we talked about earlier, that adaptation process. It sometimes, in my experience, ignores that chronic, relapsing, restrict, deprivation, fail, repeat cycle. And the article really reframes this in a way like, we got to play the long game and we got to expect that there are going to be these struggles. They're not failures, right? But these struggles and this information as we go, as we allow this process to take place.
Yeah, and to double down on the eat less, move more, the issues with it for long-term success, one of them is that it's moving the goalposts away from insulin control over to calorie control, which, we know if you've ever, had any issues with blood sugar management or A1C or, blood markers ticking up, insulin resistance, all of these things, we're so much better served by a focus on controlling the insulin response rather than controlling the calories. And the reason for that is so manyfold physiologically. But if we think about our long-term maintenance success and look at the levers that we can pull to control the insulin response rather than just micromanaging the calories, we're much more likely to have a high likelihood of success with a low likelihood of frustration, fatigue, and then failure to adhere also, because it's the smaller levers that we can do, we can pull with a big change in our insulin response, like the 2 hours earlier for our latest meal of the day, that dinner time, boundary, that intentional boundary, for example, where we're really controlling our insulin response and our blood pressure and our HRV response over the overnight cycle. And when we do that, we're having a major effect on our physiology, on control of the scale, on how much energy we have the next day, and how easy it is to adhere to the plan the next day because motivation's higher, energy's higher, everything is doing better and working better and feeling more intuitive. And so when we do that, rather than just saying, okay, this is my calorie number, let me just make sure that I'm within this calorie number, that doesn't take into account our insulin response. And so if we need to have another reason to rely on our fasting lifestyle, this would be a big one, that we can simplify things and still have a focus on long-term effects that are really going to help us maintain our results for the long term.
Yeah, so what do we do with all this information, right? We've said a lot of words today. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up, I want to see if I can kind of conceptualize it into one bucket, one kind of, I don't know, we'll see. My ability to speak in a very clear, organized way earlier when I was trying to say that one sentence. I don't know how confident I am in this right now, but I'm going to give it a shot. So taking this research article and the things that we talk about so often on our weekly calls and in our challenges and in our podcast episodes, the research really makes it clear that there are 3 possible paths that your story and your journey can take from here. You can keep doing what you're doing and what you've always done and stay stuck in the cycle of on-off regain mentality, right? Restrict, feel deprived, fail, repeat. We always like to say delay, don't deny. Mm-hmm. You can tighten the screws with more harsh self-talk and dieting mindset mentality and willpower and increase your risk of falling off the wagon and burnout and defaulting back to those eating struggles in your relationship with food.
Mm-hmm. The white knuckle.
Yep. Or you can step into a more structured, less pressure-filled, sustainable, like restraint, delay, don't deny, that protects your health, supports your metabolism, and actually fits your lifelong-term goals. So, your action step coming off this episode, Tommy, go back and listen to it again if you need to, is to choose that third path on purpose. Pick one simple, sustainable behavior or mindset shift from today's episode, commit to it for the next week, and then join us next week on the next episode. How'd I do, Tommy?
Yeah, I think that was great. Nice dismount.
Great. Well, man, heavy lift, but a great conversation. Hopefully it landed. Hopefully it's actionable for y'all. Reach out if you need us in any way. Head to the show notes, grab the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss, join one of our upcoming challenges. Send us a message if you got questions. We try to get to all of them in a realistic timeline to reply. But Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.